Yo, I'm Skinner, and in this video I will demonstrate and describe the various tech and combo interactions with Viscous. First, we will cover skill interactions and their various input lockout periods, so that we can construct combos from the basics up into the complex. We will also cover movement tech for advanced rotations and how to incorporate them into our combos. While Ball got nerfed yesterday in the most recent patch on October 10th, which removed chain stuns from being possible, amongst other things, you will see that we still have a lot in our toolkit. For example, with the new base stun duration from Ball being 0.7 seconds, to be able to cancel Ball into melee without being able to let them parry, we will now need boosts to our duration to be able to pull these same clips off. Alright, starting from the basics. What we need to do to be able to do combos is to optimize all of the damage hitting within the smallest window as possible. And one of the important things to do that is the concept of busy states and lockout periods. An example of a busy state or lockout period is your right click, and you hold left click and you'll see that it won't go off for 0.5 seconds. It is a lockout period specifically to your gun firing. However, alt-fire is instantaneous and does no lockout period for your spell casting. So if you right click and then splatter, both will go off simultaneously. There will be no delay to your splatter or any other cast for that matter. However, that's not true if you were to say splatter first. Splatter has a busy state of 0.2 seconds. 2 patches ago and before, it was a 0.5 second busy state. And by busy state, I mean you couldn't do anything with those 0.5 seconds. And that was its like cast time, even though it actually appeared instantaneously, which is something that we were going to use to our advantage. So 2 weeks ago, they turned it to 0.2 seconds, and in this most recent patch, input buffering was added. Previously, if you were trying to do something in a busy state, the input would be eaten. It would be gone. Now, let's say you splatter and you hold left click, it'll start going off. It's going to buffer those in to go off later. So if you splatter and then right click, you see how I held that right click? It waited 0.2 seconds and then it went off. But for that reason, splatter should always be our last input. So alt-fire can always precede everything, and splatter should always be our last. Good general rules. However, with puddle, you have a 0.45 second cast delay, but there's no busy state and no animation that interrupts anything else again. So you can place puddle, right click and splatter, and depending on the distance, your alt-fire will always hit first, and then ideally the puddle will hit and then the splatter will hit. And this is going to be important when we talk about itemizing. For example, Spirit Strike has a minus 12% to their Spirit Resist, which is going to help multiply that splatter's damage. Also, we're going to use Mystic Shot, and Mystic Shot has a fantastic interaction with alt-fire, where if they get hit by alt-fire at all in that radius, the closest person, if you were to hit multiple people, to be clear, will also take that Mystic Shot damage. And since Mystic Shot is hitting with a bullet, you will be able to proc Soul Shredder bullets. And since it's hitting with spirit damage, you'll be able to proc Mystic Vulnerability. And since this is hitting before everything else, you are triggering these debuffs onto that target right before everything else hits. Thus, we get some pretty nasty damage combos for a rather low budget. And now that the nerf to puddle taking 0.45 seconds means that we always initiate it first with puddle. Previously, we had to right click first and then puddle and then splatter, and that meant that you had no time to place it, and you had to perfectly input your times to right click 3, left click 1, to left click to place your puddle, and so now it's much easier. Now You just take your time, you get your puddle ready, and then you right click and splatter. And they're gonna get fucked, right? And the trick is, you knock them in the air, you track them. This is the burst combo, okay? Now, because I had popularized this combo about a month ago, people had started calling it the Skinner combo, which, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's kind of cringe to have things named after you, but for the record, I never called it that. But this is your bread and butter. These basic interactions coming together to create one-shots, okay? When you can put them to minus 22 resist because of multiplicatives, all right? Minus 12 and a minus 12 ends up actually coming out to a minus 22 to their spirit resist, and the Soul Shredder amp to multiply your spirit damage. When that splatter hits, and when you have, you know, the T2 splatter, your damage is pretty gross. And it is the basics of everything that we are going to build up to. A very important thing is that as soon as you have a tier 3 splatter, where it bounces 2 times, the way to guarantee 2 bounces on a person is to hit them in front. So the splatter will hit an AoE, and then the bounce will go through them, and you'll get 2 hits. If you were to throw the splatter directly through the person, you'll only get 1 hit. So even if you splatter through them and then the AoE hits after that projectile hits, it's still only the first hit. The only way to guarantee it is to hit it in front of them and splash through the person.
Thank you.
Alright, the next basic skill we have to talk about is the ball cancel, where we stun them into melee. Now, there's 2 conditions to when you're going to do this. 1, you don't need to escape with your ball. 2, your ball is either going to end before you can hit other people, or you just want to kill this person right now. You are trying to assassinate someone, okay? There's a carry and they need to die, and so you need to do this right now. Now, with the base stun duration of 0.7, you're not going to be able to pull it off without them being able to parry. But with duration extender, putting it to 0.8, if you have good timings and you cancel it in melee, that went off right before the parry window. That melee was happening. And then you just hit them with the full combo, right? And as you can see in clips, if they're alive, you know, do the combo, oftentimes they'll just die, especially when you're doing this late game.
I got the Kevin. Come. Oh, you're not in here. Into them.
It's about to get sticky.
Alright, let's start talking about movement with ball with our active abilities such as Warpstone and Phantom Strike, and the limitations of them, but how we can also use them together with things like a Phantom Warp. So, here's one problem with Phantom Strike, is there is a delay and you can miss. If someone is moving away from you, they have time to, they could Warpstone, they could get out of it. It does not put you into an immediate stun. The benefit of Phantom Strike, of course, is it does damage and it can happen from 25 meters away. Warpstone is only a very short distance, but if you look downward, it will stop immediately at that location. So if you ever miss, boom, you can just jump into the air and you're going to be able to Warpstone someone, right? To make the best of both of them, you do the Phantom Warp, which is using Phantom Strike to gap close and then Warpstone angled down to immediately stun the person. So it's going to look a bit like this. Now, you need to look down a lot if you want to melee someone. So for example, let's say there's someone and we want to do the whole combo on them. Then, yeah, you really need to assassinate somebody. Really look down. Otherwise, you're going to end far away from them. You're going to give them a parry window. And, you know, you don't want to get parried in the next to the enemy carry in a late game team fight. The next thing we need to talk about is movement tech and puddle rotations. For example, the basic is puddle dashing. Place puddle and then dash backwards. And, it only costs 1 stamina and 1 charge of your puddle, and you get a huge momentum increase into one direction. Then what you're going to want to do is start practicing being able to control it and slide and rotate through maps. Once you've got a hang of it here in Sandbox, you're going to want to go load up Streets and go practice these rotations. Credit to the community members that have given them, and stop by the Church of Viscous in Discord if you want to see a lot more cool routes and tech and clips, and just generally ask questions. Thank you.
Who would have thought that punching strangers would feel so good? Who would have thought that punching strangers would feel so good? It's harder than you'd think, doesn't it? This may hurt. Who would have thought that punching strangers would feel so good?
Unfortunately, when I was going through the clips, most of our puddle rotation examples were from previous iterations of the map, so I just used trackpad chats in this video, but you go around and test and you're going to find a lot of them. Now, the other movement tech that we need to talk about that is kind of insane and will let you travel half of the map in any direction you would like to go is the frog punch, or it's just majestic leap into puddle punch. But you have to put the puddle punch up on the wall, and then you'll get this huge impetus of speed, and then when you're in the air you can press majestic leap again, which will let you then descend down, and then you press space bar to then not go to the ground and keep your momentum flying on your secondary trajectory, and it lets you really cover a lot of distance. Alright, time for quirks and cube to wrap this video up. So one of the things that I want to talk about is that your puddle punch animation, you put your hands into the ground. This is a lingering animation that will override other animations starting, because Valve does not like janky animation transitions all of a sudden. And so as a result, this means that if you start a melee right after you puddle punch, you will get no melee animation. You will still play the sound, your hands will still light up, and the sound is what people parry off of at a high level, but you do obscure the melee animation. So that's number one quirk. Another thing that I want you to practice is that you can do majestic leap into the combo and then hide the melee animation into a punch on them midair. It's incredibly strong, and so you should use that application. They will never parry it. Ever. I've never ever been parried by doing the combo into a flying melee on them. So that's the other thing you should go ahead and practice. All right, next quirk we're going to talk about is, to start off the cube section, is that if you cube someone and then you rescue beat them and someone is in the way, you can drag them out of their team to your team as long as they're in a line. Sometimes you're going to go save someone that's being ulted by Mo and Krill, and you'll yoink them right out. Cube will cancel the Mo's ult on them and you'll just pull them away. Sometimes you pull an enemy along with them for part of the way. It's just a little quirk, it'll happen. The other thing that you're probably aware of, because you've seen like clips on Reddit and stuff, is that you can fly up into the skybox by using rescue beam with cube. You can get forcefully clipped through the skybox and get stuck up there. You can also do the same thing to get when pulling someone along. You can you can get pushed and get pushed into objects and get stuck in them. So try not to do that. Okay. The other things with cube. Memorize this list. Do you see these interactions? These get changed periodically by Valve as like undocumented changes in the patch notes. So not this patch, but the one prior, they changed how cube worked. So like Torment Pulse does not damage while you're in the cube because you're invincible, so you shouldn't be able to do damage. Makes sense. You cube a 7, and he does not do damage anymore. You cube a Lash, and his ult gets cancelled and he falls out of the sky. Memorize this list so you do not grief your team. If you cube an ulting 7 in the middle of the enemy team, you will never have seen the voice icon light up as fast in your life. This guy is going to create vowels that have never been spoken by a human before and invent slurs and languages that have never entered this mortal realm to call you. You will spawn an eldritch entity into voice chat in your lobby if you cube an ulting 7. And if you cube an ulting Lash and cancel it and he falls to the ground, that man is about to start role-playing a Slash in your lobby against you. So, do not grief your team with cube. Memorize this list, and if anything there has changed, stop by Church of Viscous and report it, preferably with a clip, because, again, there was a patch yesterday, and some of this could have changed again. As it does. Like heavy melee cancels had been deleted, but then they patched it back in, and sometimes we need to put bug reports. Like McInnes still just works just fine, or at least it was. Anyway, I'm Skinner. Peace out. This has been your guide to tech and interactions for Viscous.